Today, I want to show you guys how I created these 4 talking head setups all in one room. Okay, so my approach for our video today is gonna be pretty simple. I want to take you guys through step by step my entire process in setting up and lighting each of these shots. The big goal here though is to keep the equipment pretty minimal, a couple of lights, a couple of stands, diffusion, but here in a single room. Okay, so let's get started. We're here in the living room, and what we're gonna do is a setup that I think just about everybody should be able to attain within their own space, a nice straight on shot at the couch. So for the camera, we're gonna be using the ZV-E1, and I have it on this kind of like single YouTube stand setup that I built a couple years back. I have a video about it if you wanna check it out. For the lens, we're gonna be using the Tamron 17-28, but I also have the 24-70 on that camera, which I might swap to at some point. Generally for a talking head, A-roll, interview type of shot, it's always a good approach to try and maximize the amount of depth in your shot. That usually means shooting into a corner of a space or down a hallway, just something that really gets depth and separation between the subject and the background. But there isn't really anything wrong with doing something up against a wall with some careful thought about the shot and composition and how we light it, of course. We can still make a pretty good looking image. Start by finding your frame first. Bring in the camera, move it around, sit in front of it, and figure out what looks good to your eye. Okay, so we've got our frame set up here. No lighting right now, we just have the overhead interior. I like what that lamp's doing, and I can already see that this will give me kind of a nice edge, almost like hair light. So what I'll do is I'll set up a key light off to this side. We'll separate the key light from the background light to create contrast across my face with the different color temperatures. I'm going to use this Nanlite Forza 60B, and opposed to using a softbox, like a traditional dome softbox, I'm gonna use bounced light. I'm gonna use actually this 5-in-1 reflector, throw it up on a C-stand, probably right about here. Obviously this does require more than one stand, opposed to using, you know, a Bowens softbox, but I do think that this creates a little bit better light quality on skin. And we're gonna take this reflector, bounce our light source just a little bit off camera left, turn this Forza 60 on, and then we'll also wanna turn off the overhead lights. Okay, this is at 100% right now, a little too bright, but yeah, we have the reflector just kind of off of camera left here, a little bit above my eye line, kind of pointed down at me. This is gonna create kind of a shadow pattern on this side of my face. They call it Rembrandt lighting. Let's bring down the intensity. And I mean, already this is a pretty nice look. Normally, I would be using a monitor on this camera so I can really see the image as I'm building it, but I wanna keep this pretty simple and attainable for you guys. So we're just gonna be using the little flip out screen here. But I think if we bring this down maybe just a tiny bit more, I think what we can do is bring this reflector in just a little bit closer. What that's gonna do is create softer light, which I think will help with this kind of little bit of a highlight. Try and maybe just get it literally right over the top of the camera. We gotta move this just a little bit further back so we fill out the reflector. Play with this, kind of the light position a bit. Oops. And that feels pretty nice. I mean, this shot, of course, doesn't have a lot of depth. We're shooting straight onto this wall, but I think there's some nice elements kind of working in the shot here. Some contrast with this kind of black, big art piece behind me. That's helping break up this wall. The practical, of course, helps to add just this little bit of extra light here on the side. If all you have to work with is a plain white wall, then maybe just think about a couple of small elements that you can bring in to help kind of just break up the background and add a little more pockets of contrast, light and dark portions within the image. Here in our living room, we obviously have our dining table, these sliding glass windows. I actually broke it down in one of my videos, but I figured we'll go a little more in depth here. I've found that I like this shot angled kind of just barely into the corner. And let's try and find that frame right around here, just to where we have that lamp over in the left of the frame. Decent amount of this window over here. When we're going about doing a shot like this, where we're essentially going to be setting up the camera and motivating our light source from the windows, setting your exposure can be a little bit tricky. A good rule of thumb and starting place is to set your exposure based on the light source you can't control in the room. We can, of course, turn off all of the overhead lights, and that basically just leaves us with the window. We've now got our shot set up. We can see what the lighting is doing once we turn off everything we can control. And this is our starting place. The window is a little bit bright for my liking. What's our minimum? It's like 2 stops of ND. We'll start with a key light here. Again, the goal here is to kind of create the illusion that there is no light. It's naturally occurring. This thing is one of my favorite tools for just quick and dirty lighting setups. It's a big pop-up diffusion. Kind of like, pretty cheap. It's like 4 by 6 feet or something like that. Place this in, create almost like a book with the diffusion in the back. The reason I like using book lights is because I often find that they produce a quality of light that feels more real. I think it's more flattering, especially on lighter skin tones like mine. Holy bright. Let's see, right now, this is massively overpowering the light level that looks like the window is giving us. I'm gonna set this light to 6,500 Kelvin to kind of match the cool light of this outside ambient light. Bring our intensity way down. This is at about 25%. That's looking a little bit better. Let's just start actually by tilting this light up. We're actually kind of now using some bounce from the wall over there rather than just this white reflector. What I like to do to really sell this whole look is to add some hard light here on my body. We take the Forza 60B with the spotlight, same color temperature, 6,500 Kelvin. Already, what this is doing is really helping this window to feel more like there's a reason why I'm being lit softly. It's like, oh cool, there's this like patch of brighter light that resembles a lot of what we see in the natural world with sunlight and shadows that come through windows. Actually, what we might want to do is rotate this ND filter. A lot of people don't realize that ND filters are inherently polarizers, and so kind of actually just rotate this until we get a more pleasant reflection on that window. That's kind of nice. I'm happy with this. It's a wide shot. It shows off kind of our living room decor. All credit to Kylie. I have little to no role in that, so thank you. Move this plant a little bit. It's casual, it's relaxed. It could lend itself to a variety of different video topics, whether it's something emotional, whether it's something informative or educational. I often deal with the problem where I want a daylight feeling shot, but it's winter time right now. So the sun, it's already down. I don't know, it's probably like 5 o'clock. Recently, I've been experimenting a little bit more with kind of recreating that daylight feel in a room. I like this idea of doing almost like leaned over shot. We're kind of talking to camera, our 24 millimeters here. Finding our frame. We've got a couple of nice things going on in this shot already. We've got this kind of under cabinet lighting, dimmable, pretty bright at the max setting, so I like to bring it all the way down. What we're gonna do is go ahead and bring down the overhead lights, control our light sources, then start bringing in a key light. Let's make this daylight 5600. And I've set the white balance in this camera at 4,000 Kelvin. The light source in here, probably about 3,000, maybe 3,200 Kelvin. This light source being at 5,600, I want the camera to kind of land right in the middle. I don't want the daylight light source to feel too cool, but I also don't want the warm light source to feel too warm. Ooh. I wouldn't say this feels quite right. So what do we do to solve this? Well, hard light. Kind of this funny conundrum you run into when you start filmmaking. You end up wanting to diffuse everything. You want your light sources as soft as possible. And while that's typically the case, there are a lot of scenarios where hard light can do wonders for an image. Okay, so I realized that it wasn't actually fully necessary to have that second big diffusion. It actually felt a little bit better having a bit harder of a fill source to complement our spotlight in the Forza 60B that is creating that slash on the bottom of the frame. Put this little mat here on the table. It helps kind of make this surface look a little bit more interesting. We've got this nice hard light streak that's kind of hitting the bottom of the frame here. If my hands cross into it, helps it to feel like a daylight scene. No light, this is just the hard light. Disassemble the living room, unfortunately, for this next setup, paper seamless backdrop. Really classic look. It's by far probably the most universal. The major downside though is that it kind of requires quite a bit of space. Take this other C-stand. I just kicked that table so hard. You got backdrop stands. Ow. Nice little smashed heel a week later. Anyways, before we continue with the lighting setup, I need to tell you guys about the sponsor, Storyblocks. Now, before you skip forward, look, I get it. We've all heard about stock footage before. Like, do I really need it? I wasn't really sure I was one of those people until I was recently on a commercial production for DJI where I was not able to shoot everything we needed to complete the story and deliver on my end as the director and DP. Storyblocks literally was the savior to that project. But what a lot of people I think don't realize is this platform is more than just stock footage. I mean, they have music, they have sound effects, they have templates, graphics, overlays, literally everything that we need as video editors and filmmakers. And there's no headache to it. It's just a fixed monthly price, unlimited downloads, and a license that covers everything. I'm sure you guys get tired of hearing these sponsors, but Storyblocks really has done a lot for me. Not only supporting these YouTube videos, but also literally saving me on some of my biggest projects. Click the link down below, storyblocks.com/Ryan Cow. Okay, back to the lighting. This roll actually, I think, has kind of gotten warped a little bit. It's a little bent, not a big deal. It's really important to consider what your video is about, what you're trying to say, and how you can tailor your talking head shot to best match that sort of energy and mood that your video needs to convey to your viewer. The clothing you choose to wear can also have a huge impact in your shot. It's important to not wear something that clashes too much with the environment. And in fact, it can honestly be somewhere you can add a little more pop to the shot if you pick a color that contrasts nicely. This is the weirdest fucking setup. What we can do now is basically take and hang diffusion in the front off this and then drape a bounce over the back, and then we can kind of create this little tent where we can shoot our Forza 300 up into the bounce, and then it'll get diffused again as it goes through this front layer of diffusion. So it's kind of this weird single stand booklight. And just using a super clamp, we can mount the Forza 300 onto the stand itself, this impact rolling stand, raise it up as high as we need it to be. Sit in. Sometimes what I like to do is add in a little kind of practical light over here in this corner of the frame. I've used a couple of different things. Kind of just depends on what mood I'm in. Make it like a warm color temperature, 2600. Just give us a little bit more visual interest in the background, but also can give me a little bit of an edge light. So personally, I like having the kind of dirty frame rather than if I were to actually just zoom this lens in a little bit tighter. I don't know, this works too. It's kind of just up to your personal preference and how you want that shot to feel. You know, a setup like this where we have like a ton of lines and symmetry and stuff, beyond all of the tiny details, my real takeaway here for you guys is that with just a little bit of careful intention behind your talking head shots, you know, not just being like, I gotta set up in front of my desk or computer monitor and call it a day. With a little bit of careful effort with your lighting techniques and your composition and experimenting in your environment, I think you'll be able to create stuff that will not only look visually just a little bit more exciting and engaging, but can also really help to convey and tell the story within your video. So I hope you guys were able to learn something. All of the equipment that we used is gonna be linked down below. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.